Liam Carter, an 18-year-old teenager, stepped out of his tent in the middle of the snow-covered forest where he and his group of friends were camping. The fresh and quiet air of the night forest is broken by the flashlights and the tough voices of police officers. As the police team approached, led by Mark Turner, Liam felt an invisible tension engulf. Turner's cold gaze and aggressive attitude worried him, even though he knew he had done nothing wrong. Liam tried to stay calm when Turner approached, questioning him with malicious words. Despite the protests of his friends, Turner ignored him and began searching his pockets. As Turner's hand pulled out a small bag of white powder from Liam's coat pocket, surprise and indignation surged in him. "This is not mine," Liam exclaimed, but his words were drowned out by Turner's condescending gaze. A sense of helplessness and fear rises in Liam's heart when he realizes that he is being blatantly slandered. The flashlight shone on his face, clearly illuminating the confusion mixed with anger. In that moment, Liam understands that he is not only faced with an unfair situation, but also with a system of power that can easily suppress the truth. As the lights of the police car dimmed, Liam Carter stood silently by the frozen lake, a feeling of helplessness clutching his heart. Mark Turner's cold commands still echoed in his head, pushing him into an irresistible situation. His breath became heavy, forming thin white smoke in the cold air. When Turner forced him to take off his coat, each layer of fabric on his body pierced by the cold wind, Liam clearly felt the humiliation and pain intertwined. Every step of Liam's bare feet on the surface of the icy lake was like a knife cutting into the flesh, and the numbing cold gradually corroded his body. Turner's encouraging gaze behind his back made his steps even heavier, as if dragging the burden of injustice. His friends stood on the shore, frantically calling him to stop, but his gaze was focused on the delicate ice beneath his feet. A cracking crack tore through the quiet atmosphere, and Liam felt the ice collapse beneath his feet. The moment his body was engulfed in ice-cold water, he suddenly panicked. The feeling of pain and numbness overflowed, and the breath was choked by the current. He tried to struggle, but his trembling hands seemed unable to resist the weight of the cold. The screams from the lakeshore echoed, faint in the chaos that engulfed Liam. In desperation, he felt a rough hand pull him out of the water, but instead of comfort, all he received was Turner's contemptuous, sarcastic laughter, like a sharp blade cutting deep into his self-esteem. Liam Carter sat curled up on the ground, his body soaking wet and shaking incessantly. The coat that had just been returned could not prevent the cold from penetrating through every layer of flesh, but Liam knew that the bitter cold was nothing compared to the humiliation and pain in his heart. His gaze silently looked down at the trembling hands, not only because of the cold, but also because of the suppressed anger. On the other side, Mark Turner and his group of friends were still laughing, their laughter like sharp needles piercing his self-esteem. Each of Turner's sarcastic words rang out, making Liam's heart boil. He gritted his teeth, his eyes darkened, but he didn't let himself act thoughtlessly. His friends tried to pull him to his feet, urging him to leave, but Liam's clenched hands still didn't let go. Feelings of frustration, disappointment, and shame were intertwined, like a violent storm that swept over him. When Liam turned his back and walked away, his legs were heavy, but in his heart, a smoldering fire burned. He swore to himself that this would be the last time he would endure this humiliation. Without a response, without a glance back, Liam left the lakeside. His heart, though hurting, still stubbornly engraved his wrath, as a reminder that he would never let anyone control or hurt him again. When he walked into the gym, the air was filled with the smell of sweat and heavy footwork, but for Liam Carter, it was the only space he felt he truly owned. His face stiffened, his gaze focused, and every muscle on his body tensed as he lifted the heavy barbell. Every time he lifts, he not only pushes up the weight of the barbell, but also seems to be pouring all his frustration and desire to prove himself into it. Liam's breathing became hurried, every drop of sweat rolling down his face. In his mind echoed the images and sounds from that day, the contemptuous laughter, the mocking eyes of Turner and his companions. They became the motivation for Liam to continue, even though his body had begun to exhaust. Every push, every punch to the sandbag is a silent oath. "Come on, one more time," he muttered, as if encouraging himself, his eyes burning with determination. Liam's heart was beating fast, not only because of the physical effort but also because of the fire that burned inside him, the flame of change. He was no longer weak to be trampled on by others. Every day that passes in the gym, Liam seems to be rebuilding himself, from physical to mental, to prepare for the day when he faces all the people who have hurt him. In the dim light of the small room, Liam sat on the bed, his hands clutching the phone as if it contained the whole world. The message from Turner was evident on the screen, brief but challenging. "Do you think you can fight me? Try it." His heart tightened, but it was no longer the same fear as before. Instead, a smoldering anger crept in, blended with strong determination. Liam took a deep breath, his eyes glued to the words. Images of the old days came to mind. Pushes, laughter, and a sense of helplessness that enveloped him. But now that helplessness has been replaced by a strong will. His fingers trembled, not because of fear, but because of the thought of the upcoming confrontation. He put down his phone, stood up, and stared in the mirror. The reflection is a guy with fiery eyes, broad shoulders, and a strong body, the result of months of non-stop training. Liam smiled. The smile was not exactly happy, but that of someone who was ready to face it. He clenched his fists and said to himself, "Okay, Turner, I'm going to prove to you I'm no longer the kid who was easily bullied in the past." Feelings of anxiety give way to excitement. Liam didn't just want to respond, he wanted to win, and this time he was more prepared than ever. The stadium is vibrant with bright lights, and the cheers of the audience echoing throughout the space. Liam walked out to the middle of the ring, his palms slightly wet with sweat, but his eyes were sharp and full of determination. Opposite him, Turner gave a smug smile, an arrogant attitude that made Liam's heart boil. His heart pounded, but not because of fear but because of a strange feeling of excitement, as if everything in his life had led to this moment. The referee signaled the start of the match. Turner rushed forward, strong and aggressive like a beast. Liam quickly dodged the blow. His body was flexible thanks to hard hours of training. He didn't let fear overwhelm him anymore. Instead, he was absolutely focused. Every hit, every dodge is a testament to his relentless efforts. The screams from the audience seemed to dissipate, leaving only the sound of rapid breathing and a pounding pulse in the chest. Turner attacked more and more aggressively, but Liam did not flinch. He responded with a powerful punch, causing Turner to pause for a moment. Their eyes crossed. The eyes of the one who had been trampled on were now full of confidence and determination to face the past. The feeling of fighting is not only physical strength but also spirit. Liam realizes that he is not only fighting Turner but also with the fears and self-doubt that once haunted him. And now he's winning, not just in the ring but in his own soul. Liam stood in the middle of the ring. His whole body seemed to be soaked in sweat. His body was still trembling from the harshness of the match. His eyes looked at Turner, who was staggering but still trying to hold his ground, with a bitter smile. Although his limbs were disintegrating, Liam's mind was filled with a strange feeling. Not fatigue but satisfaction. He had overcome his fears, had proven his abilities, and now there was only one thing left: victory. Each of his breaths became heavy, but not because of the depletion of strength, but because of the anger that was rising in his heart. The feeling of anger when he remembered the days he had to endure, to be silent and patient in front of the insults, to those who had looked down on him. But now, Liam understands that today's victory is more than just personal glory. He was doing this not only for himself but also for those who had always trusted him, always stood by him. Liam was not in a hurry to end the match, but stood there, looking at Turner, feeling every moment of tension. He wanted his opponent to feel the strength he had regained, the resilience that could not be subdued. When Liam finally walked over, his hands no longer trembling, he felt every beat in his heart as a declaration. He was no longer a man of the past. And when the referee's whistle sounded, although it was not the end of the game, Liam knew that this match was over in his own soul. He won.